Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Axiom Legacy of the Void Fan Mod Tournament. We are playing an event with the Legacy of the Void unofficial Fan Alpha, which is based on the BlizzCon changes to the game. And I am joined for this auspicious occasion by QXE.
Hey man, going into the next PvT, first PvT of the day. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I would think so. It's CranK versus Ryung, which means there's more than just the food coupon on the line. There's a lot more than that. This is a pride thing. CranK and Ryung have been friends for a very long time, which means that they hate each other. And it's going to be a pretty damn good fight one way or the other. Ryung has actually been playing very well lately. I think it's fair to say he's been in a slump for quite some time. He's actually in the finals of ASL Prime, where he'll be facing off against Parting, after beating both Jaedong and Huck to get there. So he's doing pretty well. CranK has actually, at least for the time being, retired as a full pro gamer. He's currently coaching for the most part. He's taken on the role of the team coach in a bigger capacity, so he's only playing Starcraft 2 part-time.
Okay.
But, of course, CranK's a great coach. He won us GSTL, so it's very valuable, and he's helping all of the other guys get ready for their tournaments.
Yeah, it's... You know, the best people to advise someone about their gameplay are pro gamers or ex-pro gamers, so it's really nice to have that type of presence in a team house. And you said that CranK's been playing a lot of Legacy of the Void, so
yes.
I'm expecting some more technical things coming out of him. The day kind of started off with players who maybe weren't as familiar with Legacy of the Void as we had hoped. And then it's been ramping up from there. That last series we saw Impact using Ravagers, using Lurkers to great effect. And this one will hopefully top that as well.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. And you might argue that Protoss has a few less options so far at any rate. They do only have one new unit, but there have been some pretty significant changes made to a lot of the stuff that they can do later on. The way that the Immortal can now be used is interesting. I'm intrigued to see whether or not we see a lot of that. The Warp Prism has obviously got a very powerful buff indeed. CranK is going very early double gas gateway here. This is not at all the way that Alicia's been playing, so it looks like he wants to apply some sort of early game pressure. This looks like it's going to be a proxy Stargate.
Yeah, based on that pylon position, this is one of the best maps for proxy Stargate.
Yep.
Because the rush distance is so low, you know, you can proxy it in a place that's relatively safe, that's much closer to CranK space than it is to Ryung's, which means it's not too hard to defend.
Well, I mean, it's possible. I couldn't answer that question, but hey.
It's quite close to Ryung's base. And MMA is also going for fast second gas. He's getting his factory, and now we do see the Stargate come out for CranK.
Alright, well, this is most likely going to be an Oracle, considering it's probably not going to be anything else. That would be a little bit weird. Ryung putting the scouting supply depot in the corner there. I don't know if that's going to help too much. He does have a factory on the way. So I wonder what happens if you rush into a Cyclone in this position.
I think you just win, because the Cyclone can lock onto the Oracle. You'll never do any damage.
Well, let's see if that happens then. I wonder if he's going to see this coming. There's a tech lab coming out. You do need a tech lab for a Cyclone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thought so. Double Cyclones coming out of a reactor would be the worst thing ever created by man.
And that's what we're going to see here when that tech lab finishes. But the Oracle is on the way, and it looks like CranK's going to take the gold base as soon as he has enough money here. Mothership Core flies into the main. Getting a little bit of information. He should recognize that this is a Cyclone coming out. Oh, the Mothership Core! Oh, what are you doing?
This is not a good place to go! He mistimed that one as well. He thought he could get away. He was horribly mistaken. Yeah. Loses the Mothership Core. Not a brilliant start. And by the time this Oracle gets here, I have a feeling it's going to be blown out of the sky.
Yeah. There are opportunities here because the Cyclone is rallied to the natural. He doesn't know that it's a proxy Stargate. Oracle flies into the main here and is going to start doing some damage.
Bit of a delay there, unfortunately, and it doesn't take out quite as many SCVs as it could have. It is going to do damage, though, as you said, and the Cyclone is in completely the wrong place. The Cyclone is busy chasing the Stalker, and, well, I mean, there's only one way that fight's going to go. But CranK has done significant Oracle damage. He's killed 9 SCVs, and the Oracle's taken no damage whatsoever, so we can dip in again. forced an SCV transfer, and bear in mind that Ryung didn't expand until quite late here. He actually rushed Cyclones first and then decided to expand.
Right. And you can see the Cyclone on CranK's side of the map is now moving in. It just killed an Oracle after finishing with that Stalker. Now it's going to go up the ramp. He's going to lock onto this Mothership Core.
Oh my god.
Mothership Core cannot defeat the Cyclone. He's
No.
actually doing a ton of damage here. Now he's going to pull probes. If he can surround the Cyclone.
He got it. He got it. Nice. Nice catch. That does not kill probes that well, although it's going to get a couple regardless. And a Stalker comes out. Not, again, what you want against a Cyclone. Cyclone is a very effective anti-armor unit. Fleet Beacon is coming down for some reason. I imagine this might be carriers, but I don't know if he's going to live that long. He does get another surround, but he loses a bunch of workers in the process. He's only lost 5 workers total. I'll give him credit for this. He actually has somehow an economic lead, and I think it's mostly because of this Oracle. It's coming in again as well. It's going to get 3 more SCVs, and then it'll be driven away by the Marines. So, it's not awful for CranK.
I'm just not sure why he didn't keep one Cyclone at home, because the Cyclone is like free defense against the Oracle. You don't have to really do anything. You just lock on and the Oracle dies so quickly, but chose to go for that aggression. The big thing for Ryung right now is that he doesn't know CranK has the gold.
Yeah.
And that's going to make his decision-making bad.
Wonky.
You know, if you, if you assume your opponent's on one base and they're not, that's going to make
Proxy
things
Tempest.
very difficult.
It's Proxy Tempest.
Yep. And the Tempests are a bit different
They
in
are.
the Legacy of the Void mod. They no longer attack air. They're quite a bit faster, and they do have a single target damage over time spell.
Yeah, the disintegration, which is very effective against big units. It's essentially anti-Broodlord in many ways. It's like, well, we took away your ability to 3-shot Broodlords, but we did give you the ability to very slowly kill them. So,
yes. It also allows them to deal with medevacs a bit easier, but actually siege tank drop coming in from Ryung, and meanwhile the Oracle does go down to the Cyclone. I think CranK's not so pleased about that.
yeah, as you said, keeping one Cyclone at home does seem to be an incredibly powerful defense against almost any air. Here comes the tank drop, and I'm not going to get used to seeing that. That's just weird. What is this?
Tank is speed boosting around. He's going to bring his Tempest. You know, if he puts that dot on the medevac, it will fall.
Eventually. Very, very slowly. He's
nope.
away!
Oh, he didn't do it! Oh.
CranK, wake up.
I guess he didn't realize that the
It doesn't attack air anymore.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah,
There it
maybe
is.
he didn't know. Yeah, now it's gonna bleed
Eventually.
out.
Yeah. It'll die.
Doesn't take
Actually, doesn't take that long at all, does it?
No. I think it's about 10 damage a second. That's each tech was 10 damage, so.
Yeah.
And it's really weird now because the counter to Tempest is actually Vikings.
How good?
You know,
how well the Cyclones do against these things?
I'm not really sure because
Okay, stop find
you
out.
know, the Tempest is here we go.
Not
And the Tempest-
brilliantly. Is the answer.
Yeah. The Tempests are able to get away, and they have so much shields that it's actually pretty easy for them to buffer a lot of the damage here. Now the Viking is out, and he is going to dot the Viking, and that's the main response that the Tempests have. He needs to bring some SCVs to repair if he wants to keep that Viking alive, but
Too late.
that's not going to happen.
Yep. I mean, obviously against 1 or 2 Vikings, you can use that disintegration. You'd probably rather use it on something else. These things have, what, 50-second cooldown? So maybe you'd rather be dotting up something else. But against a lot of Vikings, these Tempests are not going to do well, certainly. They're doing well against everything else, though. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah, and he is trying to go mass. Why was he...
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's often best not to ask. Ryung's command of the English language is not incredible, so he does just tend to say random things for no reason.
Okay.
I'll give him credit, though. He tries. He does try. He pretends to understand what I'm saying, and then I realize in his responses he has absolutely no idea. Oh, we've got a four Cyclone run-by into the main base here. I mean, Cyclones fight every gateway unit really well.
Yeah. Basically, anything that can't surround them. You know, once charge finishes, the Cyclones aren't going to be so good against the Zealots. But at this point, there's just so many Tempests, and they have such high range. Like, yeah, the Cyclones would do okay if they were fighting head-on, but they're not really ever able to get close, and CranK is proxying a Nexus.
As you do. I mean, this is the sort of thing that you would do in this situation. You want this the standard Nexus cannon contain. I don't think it's going to live, but he is getting the Tempests out here. Ryung is probably going to kill this before the Tempests get there. Although, that doesn't do a huge amount of damage to structures, I've got to admit.
Yep.
Oh, here are the Tempests. Time to leave.
Yeah, and Ryung really has no response to the Tempest. I don't...
Not really.
It's like his brain is just not comprehending that Cyclones are not, like, they're not going to do it. You cannot kill the... Oh, and CranK's actually taking a little bit of a fight here, but he puts the dot on 3 of the Cyclones, so they are all going to fall in not too much time, and now he's pulling SCVs or something, and yeah, this is good night.
Yeah, I think this might be game. Ryung does not have an answer to mass Proxy Tempest, and it's really good. Don't whine at me. Get good. Oh dear. Yeah, this is pretty devastating, honestly. I think you need a few more Vikings than that. I have no sympathy. None at all. The devastating Protoss Tempest Death Ball is raining down. And there's the GG. Ryung loses the first game to CranK's Tempest.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Tempests are very... So the Tempest is one of, like, the biggest confusion units in Legacy of the Void. And I say that because it's not a new unit. So you have all these expectations about how it's going to work. But it might as well be a new unit because it's so vastly different from how it used to be.
Yes.
You know, in the old Tempest, you would just make a lot of bio, spread it out, and just stim in, and you'd be able to catch the Tempest and focus fire it down because it was so slow.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't really make Vikings against them unless you needed to kill Colossus. But in Legacy of the Void, like, they don't even attack Vikings. So the easiest thing to do is just make, 6-10 Vikings and just fight the Tempest. And if you get the disintegration on you, you can back up and repair through it. But Ryung committed pretty heavily to that Cyclone tech. I think his plan was just to make as many Cyclones as possible, and that was not going to work against Mass Tempest.
No, turns out it's a nice anti-air unit, but it deals well with light air. Big things, not so much. I imagine they're probably not very good against carriers either. In fact, with the new carrier upgrade, they're probably terrible against carriers. Yeah,
any unit that can attack the Cyclone without taking damage is really, it's just bad for the Cyclone. Because the Cyclone is all about that same interaction. It wants to kite, and it wants to be far away and dealing damage at range. And the Tempest takes that to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I would certainly say so. That was, Ryung is asking if he can play Olivia instead. No, Ryung, get good, come on. We might see a second Terran eliminated. That is a bit of a surprise. We're guaranteed a Terran in the round of 4, because the last of the round of 8 is actually a TVT. Heart versus the STC. Which,
okay.
I mean, God, are we at MLG 2011 here? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, and TVT, well, we'll see it when it comes up, but I think it's
say how that's going to work.
It's a bit more normal if the players want it to be, but it also allows for, like, the openings are a little different. But anyway, that's for another series.
Indeed it is. This one right here is going to continue on Graveside to the northwest position, and the Blue Trunks are playing Terran. Down one game, needs to get better at the game by the looks of it. Needs to get going because he got wrecked on the Habitation Station. He is Axiom Ryung. And his opponent to the southeast position, who has been spending his time well by the looks of it, since he seems to know what he's doing. In the Red Trunks playing Protoss, it is Axiom CranK.
And I think Ryung maybe will take this game a little more seriously. I don't know if seriously... I don't think he was taking the game not seriously last time, but I think maybe he wasn't focusing quite as much as he could have. There were some questionable decisions, The mass Cyclone, I can kind of understand where that was coming from, but there were some times it's like, well, the Cyclone will kill the Oracle, and you won't take damage. and then he
Yeah.
would run the cycle across the map and let it get surrounded by probes, and that put him in just such a bad position.
Yeah, I mean, the Cyclone, as you said, kills anything Protoss has. I mean, from up to Tempest, really. It kills everything that comes out of a gateway. It's probably not awful against Immortals, though I haven't really seen that as of yet. I have a feeling that it would have difficulty kiting them, but it wouldn't be impossible. It's great against Oracles. It's reasonable, I suppose, against Phoenixes. It's probably getting lifted up. And I imagine it's not too bad against Void Rays either. Against Probes, however, it's maybe maybe not the best. That looks of it.
Yeah, and one of the best ways, if you're trying to, if you're a viewer right now, you're trying to think like, how does the Cyclone really fit into the Terran army? You can basically think of it as kind of like a super bio, like a bio unit that already has stim.
Oh.
Because it has the ability to kite and do these things.
Well, the map editor needs to have a look at this area right here on Graveside, because we just found a bit where a Reaper can get stuck, so that was that was a bit weird, just in the center of the map there. So whoever made this map, get on that. Seems there's a bit of a problem there. Regardless, Ryung managed to unstick his Reaper and has made it into the base. He's maybe going to get a probe or two at most, but looks like he's going to get warded away. Gets the scouting information. He's playing reasonably standard. Expands into 2 more racks. Looks like he's going to go bio heavy this time around. That is a very early stim.
Yeah, and that's because he went Tech Lab before Reactor, which is very unusual. Basically, nobody would do that in Heart of the Swarm. But in Legacy of the Void, trying different things, trying new and crazy things. This Reaper has stayed too long, though. Stalker is going to be able to pick it off. And Ryung...
Silly person. Don't expect any mercy from CranK. It's never going to happen.
CranK is now going to go for the robotics facility. And the probe is out on the map. The probe scouted the additional barracks, probably assumed that there was a command center in the back. And I gotta say it again, we're just at 5 minutes into the game. The Reaper's already been in play. The tech is already coming down, two-ish minutes ahead of where a Heart of the Swarm game would be. It's just so nice. There's just so much more action, so much quicker.
Oh god, it makes things easier for casters as well. I gotta tell you that for a fact. I mean, it may put Artosis and Tasteless out of a job because their Battletoads references and discussion will be less relevant now come Legacy of the Void. But outside of that, for anybody else that likes to cast the game, that's going to be incredible. I'm looking forward to it. We don't have to memorize anywhere near as much meaningless nonsense to fill the first 5 minutes. Fantastic.
Yeah, because 5 minutes into the game and you're already into real decisions being made, tech going down, things like that. Do see a robotics bay from CranK, so maybe for Colossus, but I would expect this is going to be some kind of disruptor drop.
Yeah, and we saw that in Alicia versus Maya, and it worked wonderfully well. It's very, very good against mineral lines. It's not going to be great against Stim Marines. That will shut that down pretty well unless Ryung is sleeping. But it might be a Colossus drop. I mean, if you think about it, Colossus drop should be much more effective now with the Warp Prism upgrade.
Yes, so for those of you who aren't familiar, the Warp Prism now can pick up units at range. And so I think it's
Disruptor.
like maybe a 2 or 3 radius around the Warp Prism. You can just pick up a unit, and that allows you to do some pretty interesting things. The Warp Prism can kind of stay a little farther back, doesn't have to be as vulnerable. Pick those units up and get them out, but like you said, Disruptor is on the way, and he's actually going to also get the movement speed for Warp Prisms, so CranK is going to go really hard on this strategy.
I like that. I think that becomes much more relevant at this point. With Warp Prism Harass being as effective as it is, that movement speed is going to be a huge boon. And he's adding in a Colossus as well, so we could see him try and do Colossus drop, which sounds ridiculous, but really it's not. When you can pick up a Colossus from a little way away, you can drop it, it fires the beam off, it's a very fast firing thing, and then you pick it up, drop it again, fires again. It's pretty good. I mean, it works rather well. Ryung, on the other hand, is just going to go for a nice big heavy bio drop. There is defense, and the Mothership Core is nearby, so I can't see this doing a huge amount.
Woo. Disruptor does go off in Ryung's natural, kills all but one of the Marines there.
Nice.
Then he's going to have to back off because that does have a bit of a cooldown. Meanwhile, Ryung dropping his units outside of CranK's base.
Yeah, doesn't want to drop in the base. There's too much defense there. It's too difficult to get out. So That's not something he wants to look at. Herc upgrades being added on here. CranK is going to go for yet another disruptor drop. He's going to try and put it in the mineral line this time, which can be devastating. Ryung is not responding! Oh my god, it's devastating.
And that was about 8 workers killed there. Nice pickup from CranK, and he's just going to be sitting outside of Ryung's base with that War Prism. Now that it has speed, it's very hard for Ryung to drive off. You know, even with a Viking, he can't catch the War Prism, and every 20 or 30 seconds, he's going to come back in, use that Disruptor, and Ryung has to react.
And he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, he needs to be a lot faster than that, frankly. I see investment in sensor towers in the future, frankly, to spot those damn things coming at you.
Yeah. And now we do see CranK continuing to make Colossus. He gets Colossus range, getting +1 armor, adding a couple more gateways, and he is going to push down. Ryung really does not have enough units to contest anything on CRANK's side of the map, and CRANK is continuing to use that Disruptor to great effect.
Well, I mean, there's no ground defense, so why shouldn't he? You know, he can easily chase these SCVs down. If you're not going to have units in your base to deflect this, then you're going to take damage. Frankly, that could have been any number of units, you know, and you'd have a similar problem. You're just being chased down by a bunch of nasty units. You've got no defense in your base. Ryung is front-loading a large Bioforce, which is actually kind of Herc-heavy, which I'm not sure. I mean, that should kill Zealots pretty well. He just finished the Arc Gun as well. I don't know how well it's going to do against Colossus, but, I mean, he's jumping on top of the Colossus. He's in the middle of him. He's killing sentries, but he doesn't quite have enough. That could work in theory, but I don't think he had enough Hercs to make it really matter. But he's broken the front. He's going through. Colossus is about to fall. One down. Second one being focused.
And it looks like he's going to pick up, move into the main.
What a
Third
move!
Colossus does go down, and Ryung has broken through CRANK's front. The Nexus in the natural, or the third base, is probably not going to finish, and now he's just got to warp everything into his main and try and hold on.
Holy fuck, that actually works. It's a Marauder-heavy Bioforce with Hercs jumping on top of the Colossus, landing in the middle of the sentries and almost insta-gibbing them. What a maneuver here from Ryung as he dances his Herc and is now devastating CRANK's main in a massive turnaround.
Yeah, and CRANK is trying to get that second Colossus out so that he can actually try and take a fight here. But with 3 Hercs out on the map, as soon as he starts fighting, the Hercs will be jumping on top of those sentries, like you said, giving them all the probes coming in.
Here they are! That's a lot of dead sentries very, very quickly. He's focusing the Colossus with the Herc, doing a lot of damage. He hasn't quite killed it, though. He needs to be a little bit careful. There's a decent amount of Zealots now. Ryung may be forced back here.
But it looks like with all the Colossus dead, the Medivacs healing, even though there's some Zealots here, they won't actually be able to catch these Marauders once Ryung starts microing here. Got distracted in his main a little bit by this Disruptor, which has just been killing SCVs after SCVs, but more units coming in for Ryung, and CRANK is running out of steam.
Yes, he absolutely is. He's losing a lot of units. GG, Ryung with the turnaround. After enduring nonsense Disruptor harass and having his initial attack deflected, suddenly he tech switches into 4 Hercs at a time, gets the Arc Gun, jumps on top of the sentries and Colossus, and apparently you can now beat that composition without Vikings.
Yeah, that may actually be a thing, and that was really cool to see. You know, it's very hard. The interaction with Colossus is a little bit like the interaction with Lurkers, in that since the unit does splash damage, if you can redirect the damage to a place where the splash damage isn't hitting as many units, that's incredibly beneficial for you. And that's kind of what we're seeing the Herc do. Against Lurkers, you could jump in and run past, force the Lurkers to not be hitting the rest of your army. Against Colossus, even if you're not really killing the sentries, which of course he was, you're still redirecting the Colossus shots from your more fragile Bi army. You know, the Herc has 160 hit points. Marines only have 55. Marauders only have 125. So if you can get the Colossus to attack 1 Herc instead of splashing on 4 or 5 Marines, it's a huge win, and we saw that come out in that battle.
Yeah, we did. I think that anything that forces a Protoss player to have to micro in some way is a good addition to the game. And when it comes to Colossus, even pro players often leave their Colossus on a move, which is not optimal a lot of the time. You'll see them, like, attacking the flank of an army, and they're hitting, like, a Marauder that happens to be over there somewhere instead of the middle of the Marine force. anything that forces the Protoss player to have to properly micro the Colossus is good, in my opinion. And the Hook seems to provide not only that role, but also the role of a shock trooper. It can get right in the middle of a Protoss death ball and kill off key units, which is something that they couldn't previously do because the Terran player was being warded off, the Vikings were being zoned out by Blink Stalkers, and the Bio was being zoned out by Force Fields. And the Herc doesn't care about either of those things.
Yeah, the Herc can, of course, jump over the Force Fields, ignoring them altogether. Basically, whenever the Hercs enter the battle, there's going to be more lines to the Protoss army. You know, there's the front line of the Zealots, the back line of the Colossus, and then the sentries are kind of in this weird in-between position because they don't really have as much range to sit as far back as the Colossus.
Yeah.
But if you get them too close and the Hercs are able to jump over the Zealots and get to the sentries, that's not good either. So something like a roaming force of Blink Stalkers able to kind of zone out those Hercs and actually focus fire them down if they do get in close may be good, but we'll just have to see what strategies these two players employ in this third and final game of this best of 3.
It's Ryung's favorite map ever. It's Whirlwind. He's fought some of the best games of Wings of Liberty were fought on this map, and he was part of several of them. During the era of Broodlord Infester. I will never forget.
I don't think anybody will forget such a scarring experience.
Oh well, never mind. That's behind us now, and they're even making Swarm hosts less awful. So, what a bright future we happen to have. To the northwest position here in the Blue Trunks, who is asking all the important questions. He is Axiom's coach and the manager of the house. He is currently equal to his opponent, 1 game apiece. It's Axiom CranK. And his opponent to the southwest position in the Red Trunks playing Terran, coming back with an interesting build. It is Axiom Ryung.
We do see Nexus first from CranK.
It's Whirlwind, why not?
Yeah, it's a huge map, 4-player spawns, very hard to punish Nexus first. And it looks like Ryung's actually going for a fast second gas, an incredibly fast second gas, actually. So that...
what on earth does that mean?
I don't... Maybe... It might be for Hercs, but it may also be for a very fast factory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean...
Nope, Hercs. Got that
Hercs, alright, fair enough. Yeah, Tech Lab going up pretty much immediately. And how many Hercs do you build here, and what exactly do you do with them? I haven't seen Herc's early game against Protoss yet. Like, I don't know just how good they really are. Obviously, the arc gun is nice, but the research time on it is really high.
Yeah, it takes an incredibly long amount of time. It's generally, if you're going to do some kind of Herc plus arc gun timing, you're doing it after an expansion, or you're starting it and then expand. I don't know. It's weird because it takes so incredibly long. But it does... We'll have to see if he starts that upgrade. I will guess he's just going to make a second Herc.
It would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. You'd rather have that second Herc and just have it rallied across the map than have to wait for the upgrade.
We've seen the kiting potential of Hercs, shockingly enough. When we saw MMA using them, it worked pretty well. And I think early arc gun, it makes a certain degree of sense, especially against Zerg. You're dealing with Lings and Banelings very well with that thing. But against Protoss, maybe you just want whatever it is, the Ion Cannon, which actually does 30 damage, but it has a range of 1. So, it's a devastating weapon.
Are we calling the Herc's primary attack an Ion Cannon?
That's what it is. That's what the tooltip says. It's an Ion Cannon, apparently. And it murders Zealots. Holy crap, it murders Zealots. That Zealot is dead, and Ryung is gonna get out of there as well. So...
Yeah. So he's got to dodge the Mothership Core, but he may choose to just run by it. I never imagined the Herc having an Ion Cannon on its fist. Yeah. But I like it. I like it thematically. I hope that it actually fires a cannon from the sky. That'd be really exciting.
Yeah, that would be a little odd, I gotta say. We'll see if Ryung decides to build his Temple of Nod after that. But I think Power Fist would be a good option, but Games Workshop would sue the crap out of Blizzard for that.
Power Fist.
No way he's getting away with that. Well, the first Herc goes down pretty fast, and, I mean, The Herc is not a brilliant harassment unit against probes without the arc gun. It's actually kind of bad because it has a range of 1, which means that not only is it going to get battered by the mothership core, but it's also vulnerable to surrounds.
Yeah, and without the health regen of the Reaper, you know, once the Herc takes 80 or 100 damage, you can't really go back in with it. It just goes home and it does nothing. And actually, Cyclone's coming out. So Ryung's going to be able to defend the Oracle here without too much trouble, but he is going to lose some SCVs because that Cyclone is not quite in position.
Yeah. Thankfully, it wasn't a huge transfer, but both those fresh mules are going to go down, which always stings. That's the worst thing to have happen. But I think Ryung will learn his lesson from game 1, and he will stay in a defensive posture. But this is a 2-base fleet beacon, and we might see Tempests again.
Yeah, we are... Well... Double Stargate, you know, because the carrier got changed too, so I could see him making carriers, but I feel like it's going to be Tempest. It went so well in that previous game. Second Cyclone is going to come out. Again, he's going to... Oh, there's already a Cyclone in the main. Then that Oracle's
dead. Yeah, it's locked on immediately. Cyclone just... Oh, horribly... I am very happy that you can do that to Oracles. Oracles are evil. People that build them are morally suspect at best. And I think that having a weapon which blows up Oracles and laughs at them is absolutely phenomenal. So hopefully the Cyclone goes in completely unchanged and is able to do that. And we're seeing double Tempest. 2-base double Tempest out of CranK here.
Yeah, and he's, again, Ryung is going for the tank drop, but it's really not going to do much. The key for Ryung here is to identify the Tempest transition and then make the correct response to it. And he's going to be going for Stim. He's making more Siege Tanks. Siege Tanks are not what he wants, but he does have a reactor on that starport, so he can go for that double Viking production.
That he can, and he's going to need it as well, because the first Tempest is on its way. And he can do some nasty stuff with this thing. You can try and pick off weaker buildings with the disintegration, which will force a pull of SCVs to repair it. Killing CCs with it, not really a thing. You know, there's no way that's going to be allowed to happen. But as you can see, they're now effective drop defense, which is very odd because that medevac is going to die. It's got what are you doing, Ryung? No, you're not, CranK. You're not in any way sorry. You play Protoss. Cyclone is trying to live, and it is not going to. That's not going to happen. Those SCVs are now wishing they'd never taken this assignment.
Now the Vikings are out. Vikings are out, and they're going to do a little bit of damage here on the Tempest. Tempest, having just used all their disintegration beams, they really don't actually have a response to the Vikings right now.
No, they don't.
Of course, they cannot attack air without that.
Yes, and the double Viking production will be good. If Ryung stops building Vikings, he is a very, very silly man. He needs to deal with these things. He needs to keep building Vikings. He's building Cyclones, which, again, I mean, they're okay. They're not awful, but Vikings are clearly the choice here. Yeah, it's not like CranK's building anything else.
You can definitely see the difference here between this and the first game. You know, the Vikings actually force the Tempest to go away. You actually can kill the Tempest.
Yeah.
Cyclones, I think he's just making the Cyclones because he's tired of thinking.
Maybe. And it's a little bit daft as well. Like, he needs a second starport down as far as I'm concerned. If this Tempest ball gets too... Oh, carrier's being added in. Okay. If this Tempest ball gets too big, then this is going to be a disaster for Ryung. The Cyclones don't handle either of these big air units well.
Yeah, not at all. And he is trying to set up a flank here with the Cyclones, because the Cyclones do damage output to the Tempest, but they have to keep the Tempest close enough to actually make that happen.
Here's the move.
Vikings come in from one side.
It's not enough. It's not enough damage. Like, as you can see, like, it's a cool little move, but Tempests have too much health. You can't kill a Tempest with the Cyclone there. They just don't do enough damage. And obviously they're rapid-fire units, so the armor's going to much reduce the amount of damage they can put out. And they die to disintegration pretty quickly, as you can see. So, no, Vikings is the answer, and Ryung needs to stop being so stubborn.
Yeah, second starport here would make a huge difference. And even if it's not a second starport, Ryung's production right now it's 2 factories and a starport. He's going on to 3 bases. Like, he doesn't have nearly enough to actually saturate his income. Yeah,
I mean, he's adding 2 more CCs on as well, which I imagine are going to end up being orbitals. So he has this third one here, which is doing just that. And he's just building I mean, he's floating quite a lot of money here as well. As you said, he doesn't have enough production. He needs to build more stuff. He is... I'm not actually sure what he's trying to do at that third base, but it's not working.
With the lone cyclone?
Yeah, that didn't do a damn thing.
Yeah, well, it caught some probes as they were transferring, and then he lost track of it.
Yeah.
He's now trying to send another cyclone behind the mineral line, just going to try and pick off some probes because he knows CranK really... CranK doesn't have warp gate.
Yeah, he actually doesn't.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. I've never seen that.
Yeah, he's making a zealot out of his one gateway, which isn't a warp gate. Not quite sure why he didn't get warp gate there. It drops the mule, but it's a little late to repair that cyclone.
Oh, Ryung's going the standard 6 base all in.
Yeah, don't worry. He's just added 3 more factories. He's so convinced that the cyclone is imba that he figures anything that cannot be overcome by a few cyclones can be overcome by many cyclones.
More cyclones. This is not an awful idea from Ryung, because he's dealing with a reasonably slow attack force. So he says, I'm going to go 6 bases then, because I'm pretty sure you can't fight all of me. And I can really put my production up here. So he's taking the Legacy of the Void approach, which is, we mine out fast, let's get 6 bases and go. And surprisingly enough, his Cyclone and Viking force in the center of the map actually did pretty well and killed several Tempests. But the problem he's going to have to deal with is this force of 10 carriers, which is hanging around on his natural here.
Ryung really is going to have a lot of trouble against those carriers, and we'll be able to see their new ability where they get to kind of send off the interceptors and have them attack a target location.
More like that old ability, right?
Yeah, right, because they are more like Brood War.
Yeah.
I actually haven't played against carriers in Legacy at all, so this will be a new experience for me as well.
Ryung needs to build some
like
damn
the
units.
The Tempests are caught.
Oh, yeah, the cat is stuck. Slightly out of lock-on range, though, for that flank. All right, now, can he get a lock-on? It looks like he can't.
Yeah, I don't think he actually researched the ability to get the increased lock-on range. Now the Tempests are going into the natural once they cleared the turrets out. The Cyclones are trying to come in, but the Tempests actually do okay damage. You know, they attack from such high range, it's usually 2 to 3 volleys before anything even gets close enough to fight them.
Well, Ryung has managed to get 3 more factories down finally to build things, and he should be able to drive these Tempests away, but it's the next wave I'd be a little bit more concerned about. The single Zealot is harassing, as you can see. Ryung has a ton of cash, but doesn't have the production to really get anything going. By the time this carrier strike force comes in, he's going to have some problems. Like, this is a situation where I would actually consider nukes of all things.
He just scanned it. He scanned the carriers.
Oh, Christ. Well, Ryung, I like the 6 or 7 base approach here, but I think you got your production down too late. I don't think Cyclones are as good as you think they are.
Ryung's in disbelief.
Fake?
Like,
hallucination.
It has to be hallucination.
Nope. Oh dear. Well, that is terrifying. There's 11 Cyclones and 13 carriers with +2 air weapons. This... Oh my god! No. Cyclones are not that good against that.
Oh my god.
Holy
well, you know what's awesome is this is only 17 minutes into the game.
There's 15 carriers, no, 12 interceptors.
No GG.
Well, I think we determined that Cyclones are not very good against mass carrier, and there you go. That's a shame, because, I mean, Ryung, as you pointed out, was super stubborn with his insistence on not building anywhere near enough Vikings. Both of these guys were actually floating huge amounts of minerals by the end of it, surprisingly enough, because they had so many bases. And I think, like, you're not used to having that many bases and having to build that much production, I think. By the time he got 6 factories up so he could actually start pumping units out, it was a bit late, you know? I think in that situation he needed 3 times the number of Cyclones, twice the number of Vikings, and maybe a few Thors in the mix. Maybe some Widow Mines as well, you know?
Yeah, I'm not... Carriers are kind of this unit in PvT where it's like somebody a new player comes up to you, they're like, so I played a PvT and my opponent went mass carriers, and I just, what do I do? And Terran response is like, you don't let them get carriers. Like, nobody wins when they get carriers.
No.
It's just the carrier, like, it kills everything. But definitely some more Vikings, some more production. It just, there was like, just so many bases and not any way to spend their money. And CranK was really just toying with Ryung. You know, he could have done anything. I'm glad he decided to end it like that, with style.
Yeah. His Tempest build is obviously pretty damn good, and you've got to have a very specific response to it. You have to commit to Vikings. 1 starport is arguably enough if you commit to Cyclones and get good fights, but I really think 2 starports is a lot safer in that position. And we saw CranK literally win a game, a high-level Korean game, without Warp Gate. Like,
yeah.
he just didn't build it.
Because Ryung was so stuttered by the Tempest that he didn't even need anything else, really. And Ryung, the Herc opening against the Nexus first, the Herc really did not do enough damage. It would have been way better if that had just been a Reaper. But he just didn't seem to have a good handle on exactly what you need to do to deal with those Tempests. And definitely his response in Whirlwind was better than his response in Habitation, but that's just how it's going to be in a new game with new units, is nobody's really going to know at first exactly how to deal with them.
Yeah, not a clue. And it seems obvious from an observer standpoint, but when you're in the game and you've got these build orders, I guess, that have been just driven into your head forever, and then you come up against that, it's hard to know how to handle it. It seems obvious to us, but to a player, maybe not so much. These are the sort of things that people are going to have to deal with when Legacy of the Void comes out, and no doubt there will be responses to that. Scouting is obviously going to be very important. You can't be caught off guard by Proxy Tempest that way, because if you do, you're going to lose a lot. Tempest now with that dot is very efficient. I mean, it's almost guaranteeing deaths of high gas units with that thing, and you don't even have to fire a shot. You just put the dot on and run away, and you can kite and kill stuff on the way out as well. So, yeah, you can't slack off on the air units against Tempest. That's just not an option anymore.
Yeah, and for Zerg players, having more queens will probably be useful. You know, you can transfuse through that damage over time.
Yeah.
And for Terran players, it's going to be all about keeping track of what gets dotted, microing it back, having SCVs ready to repair, because you would much rather repair a unit than have to rebuild it.
Yeah. I suppose it depends on the unit, honestly, because if you have to pull quite a few SCVs to heal something that's maybe not that valuable, maybe you just let it die instead rather than losing the mining time and actually spending the resource on the repairs. But on a high gas unit, yeah, absolutely. Fix that bloody thing. Don't let it die.
Yep. There's a little bit of an opportunity cost on letting units die. You know, even if you have to spend a little bit more than the value of the unit to keep it alive, you only have a finite amount of production.
Yeah.
And so you can have more units on the field rather than, letting your units die consistently and rebuilding them. But
yeah,
again, it's all theory crafting for now.
Indeed it is. But what an interesting bit of theory crafting we get to do here. The next match is going to be a TVT. Again, another matchup. We don't really know how this one is going to go. We may see all sorts of crazy stuff. I imagine Banshee will make an appearance. I do wonder what the Herc is going to do here, if at all. Wonder if that's going to be relevant, and we'll find out after the break as Heart takes on the STC. We're going to see a Terran make it to the round of 4. We just don't know who. We'll be back after the break, folks. You're watching the Axiom Esports Legacy of the Void tournament. Don't go anywhere.